All right, so we have a nice crowd here. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you so much for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Natalie. I am the Senior Director for Member and Student Engagement with Campus Compact. And we're excited to have this conversation today about transformative experiential learning opportunities in rural communities. So this conversation sort of came up as Tom saw some of our work about rural engagement and how that's happening. And he came to us and said, hey, do you know about all of these experiences? And I said, no, I don't. So Tom very nicely introduced us to these wonderful folks who you'll hear from today. And they also presented at our conference. So this is a continuation of that conversation. And you'll hear some of the same and some new information we're really excited to hear. So I'm going to hand it over to Tom, and folks, feel free to put questions in the chat as we go along.
Great. Thanks, Natalie, and welcome to everybody. I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate Campus Compact and its efforts to really think about how higher education is engaged with and serving rural communities. I'm going to try to be as brief as I can because I see my role in this conversation as just sort of setting the stage and maybe saying a few things about why this conversation is so important. And then I'm going to turn it over to Cam, who will then lead us through conversation with three amazing people who are doing just absolutely fantastic work. But as I think about this work, and I should probably introduce myself. I'm Tom Schnaubelt. I'm the Assistant Director for the Center for Revitalizing American Institutions at Stanford's Hoover Institution. But as I think about why this work is so important, I really think of there's really 5 reasons, and I'd like to just sort of share those with you now. The first reason that I think this is important is that we've experienced a divestment from rural communities in the United States. And I want to say rural America is not a monolith. It is deeply diverse, and it in many ways represents a lot of different points of identity and success around the country. At the same time, rural America has, like I mentioned, they've experienced a pervasive divestment, and that has led to a very high level of distrust, something that my center is actually really interested in. Rural Americans are 25% more likely to live in poverty. They face higher mortality and incarceration rates than their urban counterparts. Rural communities are home to about 20% of the US population. They only receive about 7% of the foundation funding in the United States. There's anti-democratic forces that are recognizing these challenges, and they're capitalizing on rural disaffection, and they're trying to frame the ways that we work with rural working classes, immigrants, people of color, and coastal elites, and those that are quick to kind of discount this as flyover country. There's a recent study that found that the more rural a voter's community was, the more likely that person was to believe that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. So against all of this, rural Americans do maintain a disproportionate amount of political influence in the country. It's estimated by 2040, 70% of the Senate will be elected by 30% of Americans. So if we don't really authentically include rural revitalization in our agenda for democracy, we're going to be missing a key component and equation to that. So the health of our democracy is really this is the first point. The health of our democracy demands that we pay attention to and reinvest in rural America. The second issue, the reason I think this is important, is around the exposure to rurality. And I'll be really efficient. I just want to offer a couple of insights from my experience, what I've learned about as I've studied this at Stanford and about Stanford's rural students. Less than 5% of Stanford's domestic undergraduate student body hails from what would count as rural. That group is twice as likely to be Pell eligible. They're twice as likely to be first gen. And this is compared to the general student body at Stanford. And what people often find surprising is that group is also, as a student body, a subgroup, is actually more ethnically diverse than Stanford's already racially diverse general student population. That's largely due to higher proportions of Latino and Indigenous students. I'll just say, briefly, Stanford has an urban studies program. They don't have a rural studies program. And if you think about our primary study away programs, they're in New York, DC, Beijing, Berlin, Hong Kong, Cape Town, Kyoto, and Madrid. We don't have one in a rural area. So that's the second. And I think just basically these efforts that you're going to hear about today are going to provide exposure to rurality that I suspect that most of our campuses do not have. I don't think that Stanford is alone in having a domestic undergraduate student body, rural undergraduate student body that's far below what the representation would be. The third reason is really exposure to difference. Concern about the perception that we've lost the ability to engage constructively across differences is a major concern at nearly every campus that I know. And most campuses are now either have recently launched or will be launching a program around civil discourse, dialogue, something about engaging constructively across difference. It's been estimated at our campus that about 90% of Stanford's undergraduate student body leans left, and we know that most of the faculty do as well. Many of the people I know and work with have never met a Trump voter, a Trump supporter. And this, I'll just sort of say, all of these efforts to engage constructively across difference, I just want to lean into what John Stuart Mill told us. And when he stressed the importance of, it's not just that you need to know about these ideas, you actually have to hear about these ideas from people who really believe in them to really be engaged constructively across difference. So these campuses, these programs that you're going to hear about today, they exist in environments that are far more politically diverse than my campus, and again, I suspect many of your campuses. The fourth reason is really addressing this epidemic of disconnection, solitude, and anxiety. Here I'll draw from Derek Thompson, who's written a few articles on this. His most recent one was Why Americans Have Stopped Hanging Out, basically noting that between 2003 and 2022, American men reduced their average hours of face-to-face socializing by about 30%. For unmarried Americans, the decline was even larger. It was more than 35%. Teenagers, it was even greater than that, by 45%. They've reduced their face-to-face socializing by 45% in a matter of just under 2 decades. Boys and girls the ages 15 to 19 have reduced their weekly social hangouts by more than 3 hours a week. There is no statistical record of any other period in US history when people have spent more time on their own. So throughout the 2020s, solitude, anxiety, and dissatisfaction seem to be rising in lockstep. Surveys have shown that Americans, especially young Americans, have never been more anxious about their own lives and more depressed about the future of the country. So each of these programs that you're going to hear about is offering opportunities not only to form deep personal connections with others, through intense interactions with others, they also address nature deficit disorder and sort of are deeply contemplative. The last reason is basically, I'm going to end where I started by connecting this work with the health of democracy. Each of the programs that you're going to hear about offers mechanisms for students to develop the habits of democratic practice, sometimes through forms of self-governance that don't currently exist on larger campuses. So with that, I want to turn it over to Cam. That was just to sort of get prime the pump here. I'm going to turn it over to Cam Bellamy with Springboard, who's going to lead the rest of this conversation.
Great. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you teeing us up this way. I echo everything you said, and I'm going to bring a very, very brief an echoing perspective or additive perspective to that, and then we'll start in with the panelists. So again, my name is Cam Bellamy. I am the executive director of Springboard, which is a private operating foundation dedicated to advancing programs that intentionally foster the personal development of young adults. And we have a particular focus on development of meaning and purpose. I came to this work together with founders Chris and Gingy Nye, really with the conviction that when young people have lived experiences of, I can do stuff and I can have meaningful impact in my community, how I show up matters and I matter, that these young adults are really best prepared to meet the challenges of today's world. And so about 2 years ago, I began a quest to find where in the US young adults were able to experience being part of an interdependent community and to practice making real change with real stakes. And what I found were a number of place-based experiential learning programs popping up, particularly in rural communities across the US. Rural communities, I learned, are often of a size and scale that allow an individual to have meaningful impact and to experience that they matter. Um, an individual in a small community learns that if and how they show up matters, which means that these small communities, living learning communities, are providing really valuable practice grounds for young people to experience how it feels to matter and also what it means to be responsible to a community. So I'm really pleased to be able to talk today with these three amazing leaders in the field of place-based, community-oriented learning, all of whom incorporate embodied learning practices into their really intellectually rigorous programs. And I'm also excited today to explore how your college and university might connect with these programs to be able to offer your students really unique experiences. So I'm going to start by asking each of the panelists here to briefly introduce yourself and your institute. Where is it? What are your signature programs? And tell us about the work you are doing with students. And we'll start with Laura.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Hopefully so. See some nodding. I'm having a little bit of Wi-Fi connectivity challenge on my end. So if that happens, maybe Cam, you can signal me somehow and I will turn my video off. But it's really good to see you all here. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Campus Compact and thank you especially to Cam and to Tom for facilitating this. It's such a lovely opportunity to get to share some of our work. So my name is Laura Marcus, and I am the co-founder and co-executive director of Tidelines Institute, an Alaska-based educational nonprofit focused on civic and environmental leadership and working with campus partners around the country to prepare young people for lives of service to humanity and the world. Here at Tidelines, we host both a semester away program for current undergraduates and a slate of 1 to 2 week long short courses that immerse students in the communities and wildlands of this incredible part of Alaska. Cam, next slide, please. So I am especially honored to be speaking here today, connecting higher learning and civic learning to rural communities, because at Tidelines Institute, we are just about as rural as it gets. I think we actually might be one slide too far, but the previous slide with the maps shows a little bit of where we are. So Tidelines is based out of 2 campuses here in the northern part of the Alaskan Panhandle, about 50 miles northwest of Juneau and along the corridor known as Icy Strait, which is the northernmost entrance to Alaska's Inside Passage. So neither of our campuses is connected to the road system. You can see them in the little pink dots in the upper quadrant of the map, which means that your only approach to either of them is either by boat or plane. And our Indian Islands campus, in fact, is on a field station at a remote outer coast archipelago where we are the only established human presence. Next slide, please. So our other campus here in Gustavus, where I am today, is a tiny rural town on Tlingit Ani, the ancestral homeland of the Hoona Tlingit people. And among other things, we are the gateway community to Glacier Bay National Park, where our students spend ample time every year. Despite its remote setting, Gustavus is just this incredible repository of talent, in large part because of the existence of the national park. Artists, writers, scientists, and Tlingit culture bearers all make their home here, alongside people whose expertise is more physical but every bit as impressive. The carpenters, fishermen, mechanics, and beyond who have really built this community from the get-go. And we find that many of our Tideline students, especially post-COVID and in an era of intense social media, have had very little opportunity to learn from folks with very different life experiences, whether that's crossing the urban-rural divide, crossing generational divides, political divides, or divides of identity and income. Being enmeshed in the Gustavus community gives students a taste of a different way of life. Far from the anonymity and bustle of a city, we have a place where potlucks and potlatches welcome the whole community, where doors are never locked, and where people of all ages might drop in for a chat or to share a skill. Next slide. All right. And share skills they do. So to live in Gustavus, you have to know how to hunt, how to fish, how to garden, how to repair a small engine. You have to know carpentry, maintenance, how to pilot a boat, how to read a map and compass. And these are some of the skills and life ways that Tidelines Institute is able to pass along to our students. And in fact, gaining some of these hands-on skills is one of the biggest draws of our programs. Both of our campuses operate on working homesteads, so we grow, cook, preserve a significant proportion of our own food. We heat all of our buildings with wood. We do all of our building projects in-house, and students are a part of all of this, spending time on one of our 3 labor teams, garden, kitchen, or construction, where they get to learn directly from staff members and community members. And skill building really is not the only goal here. The physical labor that students are doing at Tidelines draws students into responsibility for one another and their community, whether that's by hoeing potatoes or smoking wild-caught salmon or chopping firewood or repairing roofs. Students here are students of their own lives and educations. And the goal is not to prepare them for livelihoods in the trades, although we're very excited that several of our alumni have chosen to go in that direction, but rather to give students a new set of concrete skills and new ways of engaging with physical reality. Next slide, please. So our self-governance pillar, and Jacob, I imagine, will talk a little bit about this as well, but this is a pretty unusual and a directly applicable to the Goals of Campus Compact component of our curriculum. So this is really an opportunity for students to form a political community, to govern themselves, to make decisions collectively and democratically across boundaries of difference. And technically, this is a component of the program that could easily happen in a rural setting as well. But in rural town, students write in them this incredible model of high democratic engagement, which I think is actually one of the secrets of rural places, is that for civically inclined individuals, you can have so much more impact in a rural community, in a small community, as opposed to a large one. So a great example of this is last summer, literally purely because I wanted to, I hosted a fundraiser for our now Congresswoman, Mary Peltola, who is just one of a handful of Indigenous voices in US Congress. And I am not a particularly important person in Gustavus, but because I took the initiative and put in the energy, I could just make this thing happen. And that photo in the bottom right is actually Congresswoman Peltola visiting the Tidelines campus last year. And she is, we just learned yesterday, coming back to Gustavus this summer. So hopefully our students will get to meet her and spend some time with her. Small towns like ours just rely on and foster that kind of agency and allow one person to make an outsized change. So for students feeling disempowered by mass democracy, where all they can do is vote or protest, living in a place where you can make a real difference is just this extraordinary experience of agency. And we create a small scale version of that through our student self-governance pillar, for which students can turn to local leaders as models. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. And then finally, since Tidelines is primarily an academic institution, we offer a broad array of courses across the liberal arts and sciences. And almost all of these are place-based or otherwise engaging with students' lived experience of the program. So our goal really is for the classroom to become a place where students can explore intellectually the experiences that they're having in their day-to-day lives here in Alaska. So questions about how we relate to the land, about how we relate to community, about what it means to live a good life, and how we take action on some of the most vexing global challenges of our time, from climate change to land back to the erosion of democratic norms. And the curriculum we build in partnership with colleges and universities, those that bring students up to Tidelines on short courses, those that send students to our Glacier Bay semester, And so while students are our focus, Tideline's goals are really looking beyond the immediate cohort that's with us at any given time. We are fundamentally seeking to change higher education, to make porous the boundaries between rural communities and largely urban campuses, to infuse the college experience with the satisfaction of close-knit intellectual community and connection to place, and to infuse our community of Gustavus with the voices and intellectual vitality of the university. Next slide, please. So if any of that sounds like it might be a good fit for you, your students, or your institution, I would love to speak further. And as I mentioned on our last slide, we have a variety of opportunities for partnership, especially with our short courses in the Glacier Bay semester program. And I would love to continue the conversation with anyone in the room. So my contact info is on the slide and will be on our closing slide. So please don't hesitate to be in touch. And thank you again.
Great. Thank you, Laura, so much. Philip, can we hear from you a little bit about Seguinland Institute?
Yes. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay,
Yep.
great. I'm going to take you on a little journey to the other coast here, far from Alaska. We're here on the coast of Maine, Seguinland Institute. We're a small nonprofit educational organization. We host and design these experiential, immersive programs. And before I talk about details of the program, though, I want to tell you a little bit more about this particular place, because in everything we do, we try to allow our programs to be shaped by the experience of this particular location. And we try to model for our students what it would mean to commit to a particular place, to a community, to root down, to settle in, and to be the steward of a particular place and a builder of a particular community. So we're located in Georgetown, Maine. You got a few snapshots of it here up on this slide. Georgetown's the unceded homeland of the people of the Wabanaki Confederacy. Georgetown is a bridged island with a population of 900 people. It's home to a fascinating mix of third, fourth generation lobsterers, fisher people, oysterers, clammers, living right alongside a significant proportion of people who were back to the landers from the early 70s. People who left the cities and what they perceived as a corrupt and broken culture to live more intentionally and close to the land. Those back to the landers include overeducated boat builders and carpenters, but also artists and musicians. So we have a really fascinating mix of people in this little community, and we want our students to be immersed right into this community. Seguinland itself is located on a 60-acre campus, part of which is one of those back to the land homesteads where I grew up as the child of one of those hippie boat builders and hardworking small farmers. We were launched with a very simple observation. We're founded in 2014. And when we looked out at the social landscape, I think we all just felt in our bones that we were living through an important moment in our society, that we were about to enter a time of even more profound and accelerated change, dislocation, alienation. And at the very moment when it seemed like it was most needed, it seemed like there were fewer and fewer places where young people could step away from the confusions of everyday life to think deeply about these fundamental questions of the good life and how we build community such that the good life is available to all. From this very simple observation came the birth of Seguinland Institute. Could you switch to the next slide, Cam? At the time of our founding, I was a professor in traditional academic settings, began my career as a professor of philosophy and religious studies at Carleton College, and then at the University of Maine. And I love all those settings, still love the traditional classroom and the traditional college setting. But I would say that even in those settings, I was finding that it was difficult to create the conditions for the kind of spacious reflection on these questions of the good life and on community building that I felt was necessary. It felt difficult to create in our students the kinds of deeply transformative experiences that I had encountered in certain study away programs and other immersive experiential settings. So Seguinland Institute launched with a series of programs that we call the Good Life programs. Students in our programs, it's always our goal that students have this sense of stepping away from the everyday life while also becoming more deeply embedded in a small local community. Time for clarifying their vision of the good life and cultivating their inner resources are paired with with opportunities to jump right into this little community of Georgetown as an active member. Students one day are reading Robin Wall Kimmerer's discussion of climate resilience and reciprocity with the earth at the same time that they're working with the local Georgetown Oyster Co-op to build climate resilience right here in our communities. Students are learning to forage and to garden in this particular place while also participating in meals at the Georgetown Community Center, where they get to mix with exactly the range of people that I've described before. Some of the things that Tom and Cam and Laura have highlighted, I would echo again, that students, when they're placed in this intimate setting of this small community, their sense of agency is heightened, their sense of purpose, belonging is also increased. And whenever I hear from alums from our program, maybe I get a call from an alum a few years later, I'm always trying to discern, what is it about our programs and what about the experience they had here sticks with them. And I would say the thing that I hear from them the most is this. They say, that was the place where I experienced for the first time in my life a sense of belonging to a community. And they usually, hopefully, very often say, and then I have sought to replicate that sense of belonging and community building in the college that I chose to go to, in the community that I became a part of after my college career. So to us, that is just, fundamental to everything we're trying to do. If you look at the slide here, you can get a sense of the pillars of our programs. If you have this many pillars, can you still call them pillars? I think so, but we're stretching the bounds here a little bit. But you can see some of the things I've already highlighted, this sense of spacious reflection on questions of the good life and the good life for all, immersion in the natural world. We want our students to cultivate a sense that nature is there as a source of grounding and contemplation and rootedness for them. Academics are at the core of all of our programs. Students are getting college credit through our affiliation with the University of Maine. I can talk about that a little bit more later on. We always try to make sure that this is really experiential education, though. So anything we're reading in these books is linked directly to some kind of experience that the students are having in that very same day. We always set for ourselves the very high bar of, helping our students to feel like they are engaged, body, mind, and soul, every day that they're here. The mindfulness component has become a more and more central part of our program here, especially coming out of the pandemic, where we just felt like our students needed some skills for learning to calm and focus their minds and knit back together their attention span. The creative arts infuse everything that we do here. So even when students are taking a more philosophically oriented class with me, classes are beginning with poetry and art and music. And our program culminates in a course we call the Creative Life, where students are getting art credit and really exploring, doing a deep dive into what it means to tap into your creative instincts and expand your capacity for creative thought and action, especially in a rapidly changing world. Final two pillars I'll highlight just very briefly: the back to the land ethic. So we've got our roots here on this homestead, and we want students to feel all of the agency that comes with being a community builder and a homestead builder. I mentioned some of the ways that we engage the community here, and we love that our students continue to return to our community for internships and other connected opportunities. Cam, how am I doing for time here? Am I getting to the end?
Yeah, but please go finish up and then
Yeah.
we'll move on to, yeah.
Just briefly, I could say that most of our programs are built around a progression of 3 courses. So students begin with the Good Life course, which is the philosophy course with me, asking those timeless, universal questions of the good life. Second course is called The Good Life for All. So we move from the timelessness to the particularities of this moment. What are the pressing issues of our time, particularly looking at climate change, climate resilience? How do we engage those issues in a holistic and sustainable manner? And then the programs generally culminate with the Creative Life course and the arts as this way of harmonizing and bringing together all of the different pieces of the program. So who are the Seguinland students? We tend to get students who are 18 to 20. They're either traditional gap year students, so right between high school and college. We often have students who are spring admits to a college, so they're heading off somewhere in the spring, but coming here for the fall. We have a number of students who come to our program just as like a study away program, same as they would go for a study abroad program during sophomore or junior year. We also have a number of students who come to us in the midst of a life transition. Maybe they're transferring from one college to the next, and they come here to sort of regroup and get clarity about what they want. So across, we've really found that there's a benefit to having students that are coming for a number of different reasons or different phases of their college career, but all seeking, again, these elements of the program, the time for spacious reflection on the good life, and also that deep sense of connecting to a community in this rural part of Maine. So happy to share more about the program later in the panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Philip. Thank you very much. So yeah, so we've heard from Laura in Tidelines in Alaska. We've heard from Philip at Seguinland Institute in Maine. And now we're going to go right to the middle of the country, to the heartland in Wisconsin. And Jacob, I want to invite you to share with us about Thoreau College and the work that you're doing there.
Thank you, Cam, and thank you to Campus Compact and Tom for making this possible. It's really a privilege to speak alongside Laura and Philip, some heroes of mine, and to stitch together the continent. So yes, we are Thoreau College. My name is Jacob Hundt. I am the director and founder of Thoreau College. We're located in Viroqua, Wisconsin, which is in the heart of the Driftless region in the upper Mississippi Valley. This is an unglaciated region, landscape different from most of the Midwest, in that it has hills and forests and a lot of biodiversity. And also a lot of cultural and human diversity. So we are, I think I can echo a lot of the things that we heard from Laura and from Philip about the qualities and the character of our program. We think of our curriculum as being built around 5 pillars: academics, labor, community, art, and nature. Academics generally take the form of seminar-style discussions, of primary source texts, of direct experiences with nature, so ecology, and also with community here in our rural community. And labor, we run a small farm. We have a flock of sheep, and we do shearing and lambing and fencing. We also have gardens and a greenhouse that we operate with student labor, produce a lot of food for our small community. We do practice, as Laura mentioned, self-governance, which is an important component of a sense of belonging and a sense of engagement. So internally, students live in independent households here located in town, and so they are managing their lives together practically in terms of planning some of their meals, household maintenance, and just communication skills in groups of 5 or 6 students living together. We were also engaged very actively with the life of our vibrant rural community. Our community is one similar to what Philip was describing, one of the centers of the Back to the Land movement in the 70s and 80s. Many organic farms, as well as a vibrant alternative education scene here. Part of our work goes out of the Waldorf school movement, of which there's an elementary school and a high school here, as well as a folk school. The Danish folk school model is an important influence on what we are doing as well. So students come to our community from all over the world and all over the country at several different phases of their life, perhaps right after high school or in transition between years of college, or indeed we've had students who come after a 4-year degree. And they are immersed into a very vibrant rural community. They quickly form connections outside of our immediate campus community to often find mentorship and internship opportunities, employment opportunities, and we have had a number of our students stay or to go off and explore other gap year programs or micro colleges in other parts of the country or the world, or other rural communities. The arts are a really important part of what we do, really woven into each of our programs. Are in both visual and performing arts. One of the things that we do is really try to build a strong rhythm into every day and week and program. And that begins with singing every morning. We begin with a morning circle each morning that includes some simple singing, often some movement or meditative practice, contemplative practice, and just some sharing of observations of nature. And from that, that builds a rhythm for the rest of the day and a community based around some shared experience and practices. We have lunches together, also usually involving a little bit of singing as well as food that's coming from the land and from our work together. But we also incorporate visual arts, botanical drawing, landscape painting, folk arts like spoon carving and basketry, sort of direct engagement with materials and close observation of the natural world. And then finally, nature. We through academics, through authors like Robin Wall Kimmerer and Henry David Thoreau, who are writing very precisely and thoughtfully about the relationships between human beings and the natural world. We are also working with plants and animals in the soil in our labor program, observing and working with the materials of nature and the arts. And then we also have a very robust expeditionary learning, expeditionary component in our programs, including most semesters will have a couple of week-long group expeditions, either hiking or canoeing expeditions somewhere in our region or in the wider Midwest. We also have a series of solo experiences ranging from 24 hours up to 5 days that we facilitate for students. So deep immersions in the natural world and an attention to the changes of the season, the cycles of the year, and the cycles of the stars. And just as a symbol of this, I'd like to draw attention to the image here. This is a product of a past student inspired by Robin Wall Kimmerer's chapter about asters and goldenrod. Really a masterful work of combining the aesthetic attention and scientific precision. And so the asters are there, the goldenrod are there, as well as the moon and the stars. So academics, labor, community, art, and nature. Those are the pillars of the programs that we offer. Cam, do you want to change the slide?
Sure.
So we describe what we are doing as a micro college, and this is people are interested in how we understand this idea. I've also been doing a podcast called Micro College that both Laura and Philip have appeared on, and a bunch of other people that have been inspiring to our work, people thinking and writing about education and really modeling and experimenting with this transformative education all around the world. And I keep hearing about more every day. So I think the podcast will continue. But when we use this term micro college, the characteristics that are essential in our definition are the scale, humanly scaled. So the programs that we have run here have ranged from the biggest has been about 18 students, and the smallest has been maybe 3 students. The sweet spot, I would say, is about 12. This is a group that can go camping together, can go and visit a farm without overwhelming it, but also can be big enough to have some diversity in the conversations around in a classroom and to really do a big labor project of some kind. It's a kind of a natural social unit that is quite different from the mass educational context most students have experienced. It is place-based in all the ways that we've heard from both Philip and Laura, is both the natural communities of the plants, the animals, the cycles of the seasons, the qualities of the soil and the minerals, but also the human communities of a place that are really an important part of our curriculum. Really a sense of belonging to a place is an experience that we hope to provide to all of our students. We see microcolleges and our work together as being meaning centered, and that's a broad kind of conception that I guess leaves open space for people to bring up really profound questions of meaning, purpose, direction, questions of spirituality, questions of what it means to be human in this time in history. And I think the students who find their way to Thoreau College are those who carry those questions. And I see it really as our mission to open a space without defining the answers, without prescribing any kind of form to this discussion, but an open space for these conversations to happen. And we see as students settle into their time with us, they begin to be able to talk about things maybe they've been carrying about ethics, about vocation, about purpose and direction. And so creating a space, a container, a safe container, and an open container for that to happen is a key thing. And then finally, as we've been describing, our curriculum is holistic. It's for the whole person. It is not just intellectual. It is not just vocational. It is including the head, the heart, and the hands, the social being, the practical being, and the engagement with the world of nature. So humanly scaled, place-based, meaning-centered education for the whole human being. So one more slide, I think.
you.
Yes, that's our place, the Driftless. Yeah, so just so you can see where we are right at the intersection of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois. The Driftless region, a really special place, a jewel in the heart of the Midwest that many people even in the Midwest don't know about. Home to one of the greatest concentrations of organic farms anywhere in the country. The home base of the Organic Valley Dairy Co-op, and many Amish farms, and really people taking deep care of and stewardship of the land in the center of the Midwest. And so our programs, if you can move to the last one, our core programs are the Metamorphosis Gap Semester, both fall and spring. These are 4.5 month long programs, so enough time to see the changes of the season here, which are very dramatic here in the Midwest, either from summer into winter or from winter into summer. The cycles of agriculture that flow with that are an important part, and we experience those in the expeditions and the solo curriculum as well. We also offer shorter programs, especially our summer field school program, which we're about to start next week, a 4-week program. And we also have, in the last year, pioneered a Shakespeare Festival, the Viroqua Shakespeare Festival. So arts in a rural community is something that we are able to bring to our place. So in conclusion, I would say, we are like Laura, I'd like to send out an invitation. If you are from a college or university, we're definitely seeking partners, higher education partners, institutionally, as well as individual professors and certainly students from institutions. So if this is interesting to you, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Well, so with the time that we have left, I'd like to do 2 things. One, Laura, Jacob, and Philip, I'd like to invite you into conversation about, I wonder if you can give us some examples of how you are already engaging or connecting with colleges and universities. What kind of partnerships or connections would you like to see developed? Yeah, and maybe just if the 3 of you are able to share some of that, because we are talking to college and university leaders here. And then I'd also like to invite, while we have that conversation, I'd like to invite the participants to please put questions in the chat. Yes. So, oh yeah, I'm just seeing from. So please, if you have any questions, please, you can put them in the chat. We'd love to hear from the audience and hear what your questions are also. Okay. Yeah.
So Cam, I would be happy to jump in there if that works. So at Tidelines, college and university partnerships are really central to our model, and they work kind of in 2 ways for us. Either through our short courses, we form relationships usually with faculty who want to bring up a group of students usually for an accredited intensive summer course. So those tend to be somewhere in the environmental studies because that's really one of our strong suits, but that has ranged from traditional ecological knowledge to environmental writing to field ecology. So we'll often have a faculty member bringing up a group of generally 10 to 15 students for 1 to 2 weeks, and then we do all of the on-site place-based teaching, all of the logistics, the meals, housing, the kayaking expeditions, and all that. So that's one option. And then the other option is really through our glacier-based semester program. And this is a study away program in the same way that a student would do study abroad in Berlin or Cape Town or wherever they choose to go. And for that usually means engaging with university study abroad offices or offices of global engagement, or however the university conceptualizes of those relationships. And as we have learned over the past few years, that process is very different at every institution, but often means getting onto an approved list of study away programs. So if either of these opportunities sounds like they would be a good fit for your school, as I said, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We still do have capacity, certainly for more short courses, but we're especially looking to grow our relationships with college and university sending schools who would like students to be able to attend the glacier-based semester and have that articulate with the rest of their college career.
I can follow up on that. Similarly, so we have our semester programs and we have our May term programs. We have a formal agreement with the University of Maine by which students taking courses here can get credit through the University of Maine. But the majority of our students come from outside of Maine, from all over the country, and more international students as well. So we're always looking to partner with colleges who want to have a formal or a one-off arrangement with us whereby their students can come to our programs and get college credit either through the University of Maine or through their home institution. So yeah, the semester programs, it functions more like a study abroad program, semester abroad. Our May term tends to draw students from many different colleges and universities who are just looking for an additional element to their academic year. So yeah, like Laura and Jacob, we're also seeking more partnerships with colleges and universities, particularly as a place to direct their spring admits, to send students who are maybe taking a pause between, say, freshman and sophomore year or sophomore year and junior year, or for students who are looking for a study away semester in the woods of Maine.
Yeah, I would say our programs here at Thoreau, I mean, our students have come very independently so far. We've had plenty of students who are doing a traditional gap year, usually kind of considering their next steps after high school or indeed immediately after a bachelor's degree. We have had, a portion of our students have been doing some form of a study away. We have not, with maybe one exception, have yet had students who are applying this to some sort of accredited programs yet, but that's a high priority to us. We are in conversation with several higher institution partners right now to establish something like what Philip was describing with the University of Maine. That would be a big step forward for us. So it's an opportunity here for anyone out there that's looking for partners. Thoreau College right here in the Midwest.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Maybe on that note, and I want to ask Farah's question also, and I don't know that I fully understand it, so I will come back to that one. But how do you work with colleges in terms of granting and transferring credits? Are colleges generally receptive? Do you have to intervene in that process, or how does that work?
So like Philip, Tideline and Seguinland, their relationship with University of Maine, Tidelines Institute has a relationship with Western Colorado University. So they're our school of record. Students can walk away from our program, specifically the glacier-based semester, with a full semester's worth of college credits, about 15 credits for that term. And for students who are pursuing that route, we have found that the significant majority of their institutions are perfectly happy to accept that credit. What it really comes down to at each institution and with each student is precisely how those credits will be transferred. Are they going to be just towards graduation credit? Will they fulfill gen ed requirements? Will they fulfill major requirements? And that is very much a case-by-case basis. I am not even optimistic that there would even be a one-size-fits-all answer to that, although it would certainly make our lives easier.
Mhm.
Great. I see a question here from David Drew. He says, the divestment of rural areas is a misstep of our system. And he would also offer that divestment in urban inner city neighborhoods has created similar disparities. And he's asking about the concept of urban microcolleges and Danish folk school oriented schools for life deserved attention and investment as well. Thank you for that, David. Please look at the Springboard website. I think that was a big part of our inspiration. So thank you for picking up and noting that. Yeah, Isabel is asking about tuition. Do students pay money for the programs, and is there financial help? Yeah, I'll leave that to all of you to speak to that.
Sure, I could speak to both of those
Mhm.
questions, I think. Just one thing to say is that, when we created these programs and put this very simple invitation out into the world, which is just step away from everyday life, the hustle and bustle, slow down, think about this big fundamental question of the good life, be immersed in a rural community. We just didn't know, are young people interested in that kind of thing? And the answer from the very beginning has been a resounding yes. So every one of our programs has always been full to the brim. We can't take all the students that want to come to our programs. We have cohorts of 21 students, and we're not going any bigger than that. Like Jacob, we really believe in the humanly scaled element of the program, that is fundamental, that's essential to what we're trying to accomplish. So we are looking for ways to develop additional campuses and additional partnerships whereby we can take more students who do want to attend these programs, and part of that is the financial aid piece. So yeah, we're a small nonprofit, but we are eagerly fundraising for financial aid and scholarships. That's really the bulk of what we try to raise money for. So we do have scholarships, and we try to meet the financial need of all the students who apply. That's a huge part of our mission.
Yeah, I could add, yeah, the financial accessibility is really important to our origin story and to our mission here. We're offering longer programs than some gap year programs out there. Really over a full semester, and we were bringing people to really live here full time. And so we work individually with each admitted student to find a pledge that will work for them. We do ask some financial contribution from every student who comes in, but the range of what students have actually contributed is very wide. And I really think of this as the first class, as the first part of our curriculum to just have some practice talking about the difficult topic of money. So when a student is admitted to Thoreau College, we set up a Zoom or in-person meeting if they're from the area. We share our whole budget and talk about what it costs to run a program, and talk about what our targets are for enrollment and for fundraising and other sources. And then what follows is usually a very interesting conversation. You can really see different families talk about money differently, and some really have observed that students from lower income backgrounds know the value of money. They know what things cost in a way that sometimes more privileged people don't. And so often they're able to come in with a very precise amount of what they're able to contribute. But in general, that's it's actually a rich part of the process, and as a result, we've been able to have a very diverse economic background to our student body so far.
I'll just add really quickly to that. For the glacier-based semester, for students who are attending that as an approved program, they can always transfer their federal, state, and in many cases, institutional financial aid to help cover costs as well. And Tidelines Institute offers in-house financial aid as well, up to and including full scholarships.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laura. I'll ask these two questions together. How do you find your students, or how do the students find you? And how diverse are your cohorts?
Students do seem to mostly find us increasingly through word of mouth, which we love, though we do have a good track record in at certain colleges and universities where we're getting repeat students coming our way. Diverse cohorts, we always want a more diverse cohort than what we have. Our average tends to be about 35% of our student body are persons of color.
Great. Anything to add, Laura or Jacob, or?
Yeah.
Sure. So we find students at Sigwinland through word of mouth, increasingly through our sending schools, colleges and universities where we have established relationships through their study abroad office, often based on faculty and staff recommendations at those institutions. And also increasingly through social media and our online presence. Getting a more diverse cohort has always been a priority for us. It's an area in which we have had increasing success over the past few years. Our cohorts tend to be between 50 and 65% students of color.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our students have found us in a great variety of ways, mostly word of mouth. I would say there's a few networks that we are connected with that have brought students to us. One of those is are the Waldorf schools, and we've had students who've been connected with Waldorf education in different parts of the world who found their way here as part of connections to our curriculum and to my career. But also part of our inspiration, as with Tidelines, there's a story that is connected with Deep Springs College, which students have found us kind of regularly by reading up on Deep Springs College and finding out that there's a part of our inspiration is coming from Deep Springs as well. And those are very interesting and often very diverse people from different parts of the world. And yeah, our programs in terms of ethnic and racial diversity, I've been, I think compared to the groups at Sigwinland and Tidelines, have been just our total number of students has been relatively small. But within that context, I think I've been really pleased and with how diverse they have been. And yeah, I can't cite a number like Laura Philip path, but I think it's there's definitely several people of color in each group, and these are small groups of and it really does enrich the experience of everyone there.
Thank you, Jacob. Tom, I wonder if, I want to thank Campus Compact again, and Jacob and Philip and Laura also. And Tom, thank you also for this wonderful introduction to Campus Compact, which I think has proven really valuable to all of us. Tom, do you have anything you want to say to wrap us up here?
Yeah, I just see Isabel wrote this question: do you have students of the rural communities you're situated at? And I nod your heads because I bet all of you do. Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes is the answer to that question. Let me just say, I want to give a huge shout out to the work that Philip, Jacob, Laura, and Laura's partner, the co-founder, Zach, have done. This is I think people that are involved in Campus Compact are basically people who want to reform higher education, who see things being done and want to do them differently. And these are three people that you've just heard from. And I'll include you, Cam, in this as well, in your work to try to kind of wrap your hands around and support these micro colleges and these programs. I think I just want to say kudos to you for kind of going out on a limb and really trying to make something different happen in higher ed. And kudos to you for, and Philip, I loved what you said. You were a part of the traditional four-year thing. You still see value in it, but there's also this new need. And I really hope that people will find ways to connect their institutions with these kinds of, this kind of work. I think Isabel's question about, do you have students from the rural communities that you're situated in, it gets at the core of what Campus Compact is about. We don't want to act on different communities. We don't want these things to be parachuting in and out. And one of the beautiful things about the work that these three entities are doing is that they are embedded. Like I've heard Laura now talk about the work and Gustavus, and sort of like it's not like her partner grew up in Gustavus, like that they are definitely a part of these places. Jacob is a Wisconsinite. Like I mean I think there's no better form of embeddedness around this. So I want to thank you for that. I want to say one other thing, and I'm maybe saying this mostly to Campus Compact, but I actually think there's another potential way to engage these entities that I think can be restorative and regenerative and generative for the field. And that is that these could be places that folks who are doing Campus Compact kind of work can themselves go to be renewed, to be regenerated, to kind of work with each other to figure out what's next. How can I renew myself so that I can stay on in the good fight? So I just want to say that, like, for the whole group, one of the things I obviously want to see campuses like my campus do work with these organizations, but I also think we might want to think about this as a field building opportunity. Anyway, thanks everybody, and thanks Cam for giving me the opportunity to say just a couple words at the end.
Thank you, Tom, and I want to thank you all for being here. And you see on this slide here all the contact information for everyone here. So please reach out if you have any further questions or want to connect. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And I will forward on the slides and the recording when they are available. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you to our speakers.
Thank you all.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you, Rhiannon.
Thank you.